The gunshot echoed across the vast Wyoming landscape as Zara Holbrook frantically dug through the chest of drawers, searching for her husband's pistol while her 7-month-old daughter wailed in the cradle. It was March 1878, and the news of John's death in the Sweetwater mining collapse had reached her only yesterday. Now this bandits or worse at her doorstep when she was at her most vulnerable. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice cracking as she finally located the Colt revolver. "I'm armed." "Just me, Mrs. Holbrook," came a deep voice from outside. "Lucas Galloway. I worked with your husband in the mines. I've brought some provisions." Zara hesitated, pistol still clutched in her trembling hand. Lucas Galloway, she recognized the name. John had mentioned him in passing, a quiet cowboy who'd taken work in the mines when the cattle drives grew scarce. She moved cautiously to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to see a tall figure standing on her porch, hat in hand, a burlap sack at his feet. "What do you want?" Zara called, bouncing her daughter, Emma, against her hip to quiet her cries. "Nothing, madam, just bringing some food. Heard about John. Terrible thing." He shifted uncomfortably. "Thought you might need help." Zara swallowed hard. Pride told her to send him away, but reality whispered harsher truths. The pantry was nearly bare, and with winter's grip only just loosening, her small garden wouldn't yield anything for weeks. John's final wages wouldn't arrive for another month, and the money she had wouldn't stretch far. She unbolted the door and opened it just enough to see him properly. Lucas Galloway stood over 6 feet tall, his frame lean but strong. His face was weathered from years under the sun, but his eyes were kind, deep blue and earnest. He couldn't have been more than 30. "I appreciate the thought, Mr. Galloway, but we're managing," she said, her chin lifting slightly. Lucas nodded, his gaze moving briefly to Emma before returning to Zara's face. "Of course you are, Mrs. Holbrook, but there's more food here than I can eat myself. Would be a shame to waste it." The simplicity of his logic disarmed her. Zara looked down at the sack, noting the outline of a ham and what appeared to be potatoes. "John was a good man," Lucas continued quietly. "He saved my life once when a support beam nearly took my head off. Least I can do is make sure his family doesn't go hungry." The mention of John brought a fresh wave of grief, and Zara blinked back tears. Proper widows didn't cry in front of strangers. Proper widows maintained dignity. But she was 24 years old with a baby and a homestead to manage alone, and dignity suddenly seemed less important than survival. "Thank you," she said finally, opening the door wider. "Would you like some coffee? It's the least I can offer." Lucas looked surprised at the invitation but nodded. "That would be kind, madam." Zara placed Emma in her cradle and busied herself with the coffee pot while Lucas set the provisions on her small kitchen table. She was acutely aware of how unkempt she must appear, her dark hair hastily pinned, her dress wrinkled from sleeping in it after exhaustion had claimed her the previous night. "The foreman said there'll be compensation," Lucas said, breaking the silence. "Not much, but something." "They're taking up a collection, too, among the miners." Zara nodded, keeping her back to him as she fought for composure. Were you there when it happened?" "Yes, madam. John was working the deep shaft. I was about 50 yards back when we heard the supports crack." Lucas's voice grew softer. "He got 2 men out before going back in for Peterson. That's when it came down. A hero's death. It should have offered comfort, but it didn't. Heroes went to their graves and widows still faced empty beds and uncertain futures." "He talked about you all the time," Lucas continued. "And little Emma. Said you were the strongest woman he'd ever known. Said you could shoot the wings off a fly at 100 paces. A small smile tugged at Zara's lips despite her grief. He exaggerated, it was 50 paces at best. The unexpected joke hung in the air for a moment before Lucas chuckled, a rich, warm sound that somehow eased the heaviness in the small cabin. Zara turned, coffee pot in hand, and found herself meeting his gaze directly for the first time. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Galloway, truly." "Lucas, please," he said, accepting the cup she offered. "And I'll be back in a few days to check on you and the little one if that's all right. got some fence posts that need mending out back by the looks of it. Zara wanted to refuse, to insist she could manage, but the practical part of her, the part that had agreed to marry John Holbrook after knowing him only 3 months, because he offered security and kindness, recognized an opportunity for help that she desperately needed. "That would be appreciated," she said simply. Lucas nodded, finished his coffee in 2 long sips, and stood. "I'll be by on Sunday then." He paused at the door, settling his hat on his head. "Mrs. Holbrook, John was right about you being strong. But even the strongest folks need a hand sometimes." With that, he was gone, leaving Zara standing in her kitchen with an abundance of food and the first flicker of something that felt dangerously like hope. Lucas returned on Sunday as promised, and then again the following Wednesday. Each time he brought something: firewood, a repaired hinged on the chicken coop, fresh eggs from his own small ranch 10 miles east. He never stayed long, never presumed familiarity, but his quiet presence became a fixture in Zara's fractured world. April brought rain and mud and the first tentative shoots in Zara's garden. It also brought whispers from town. Zara heard them when she ventured to the general store, concerned glances and hushed comments about the young widow and the bachelor cowboy. "I'm just helping out a friend's widow," Lucas told her plainly when she mentioned the gossip. They were sitting on her porch, Emma sleeping peacefully in Zara's arms as the sunset painted the distant mountains gold and crimson. "People will talk. Let them." "It's not right that your reputation should suffer," Zara insisted. "People are saying you're pursuing me, that it's indecent," with John barely cold. Lucas's jaw tightened. "People find indecency wherever they look for it. I'm not pursuing anything except making sure you and Emma are all right." But as spring deepened into summer, Zara found herself watching for Lucas's approach on the horizon. Found herself taking more care with her appearance on days she expected him. Found herself laughing at his dry observations about the stubborn mare he was breaking or his deadpan recounting of the latest tall tale from the saloon. In July, Zara's nearest neighbor, Abigail Winters, stopped by unexpectedly. Abigail was 50 with iron-gray hair and opinions just as rigid. "You're playing with fire, Zara Holbrook," she said bluntly, watching Lucas ride away after repairing Zara's wagon wheel. "A woman alone needs to be beyond reproach." "Lucas is a friend," Zara replied, her tone cooler than the lemonade she'd offered. "Nothing improper has happened." "It's not what happens that matters, it's what people believe happens." Abigail's gaze softened slightly. "You're young, dear, and pretty, and lonely, I expect. Just be careful. Hearts heal slower than reputations." That night, after Emma was asleep, Zara sat alone by the fire and allowed herself to acknowledge what she'd been denying. She was attracted to Lucas Galloway, to his quiet strength and unwavering reliability, to the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, to the gentleness in his calloused hands when he held Emma, and she felt guilty. So crushingly guilty that she wept silently into her apron, mourning John and her own treacherous heart in equal measure. The next time Lucas came, Zara met him at the door with rehearsed words. "I appreciate everything you've done, Mr. Galloway, but I think it's best if you don't call anymore." She kept her voice steady, her expression neutral. "People are talking, and I can't have Emma grow up with whispers about her mother." Lucas studied her face, hurt flickering briefly in his eyes before understanding replaced it. "I respect that, Mrs. Holbrook, but the offer of help still stands if you need it. Just send word." He tipped his hat and turned to go, and Zara nearly called him back. Instead, she closed the door and leaned against it, wondering why doing the proper thing felt so utterly wrong. August brought scorching heat and a drought that threatened Zara's garden. She hauled water from the creek daily, Emma strapped to her back, determined not to lose the vegetables that would see them through winter. When a rattlesnake struck at her, missing by inches, she killed it with a hoe and then sat shaking in the dirt, the magnitude of her aloneness overwhelming her. In September, Emma developed a fever. For 3 days and nights, Zara bathed her daughter's burning forehead with cool cloths, praying to a god she wasn't sure was listening. When Emma's breathing grew labored, Zara wrapped her in blankets and placed her in the wagon. The road to town was 15 miles and the doctor might not even be there. Lucas's ranch was closer. Zara hesitated only briefly before turning the horses east. She arrived as dusk was falling, her hair wild from the wind, her eyes red-rimmed from fear and exhaustion. Lucas came running from the barn at the sound of her approach. "Emma's sick," Zara said without preamble. "I didn't know where else to go." Lucas took the reins, helped her down, and carried Emma inside without a word. His cabin was simple but clean, with a large fireplace and sturdy furniture he'd clearly made himself. "My mother was a healer," he said, laying Emma gently on his bed. "Taught me some things before she passed. Let me look at her." Zara watched as Lucas examined Emma with surprising expertise, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Looks like lung fever. We need to steam the room and get this fever down." They worked together through the night, Lucas boiling water with pine needles and herbs while Zara held Emma upright to help her breathe. By morning, Emma's fever had broken, and her breathing, though still congested, was stronger. "You saved her," Zara whispered, watching her daughter sleep peacefully for the first time in days. Lucas shook his head. "You got her here in time. That took courage." "It took desperation," Zara corrected. She looked around the cabin, suddenly aware of the intimacy of their situation. "I should go once she's strong enough." "You'll stay until she's well," Lucas said firmly. "I'll sleep in the barn. No one will know you're here." But someone did know. 2 days later, as Emma was recovering steadily, Pastor Thomas Mitchell arrived at Lucas's door, his expression grave. "Mrs. Winters saw Mrs. Holbrook's wagon here," he explained stiffly. "The community is concerned about the arrangement." "My daughter was dying," Zara said, anger overriding embarrassment. "Lucas helped save her life." "Nevertheless, appearances, with all due respect, Pastor," Lucas interrupted. "I don't much care about appearances when a child's life is at stake. Mrs. Holbrook has been nothing but proper, and anyone suggesting otherwise will answer to me." The pastor left disgruntled, and Zara knew the damage was done. Her reputation, already precarious, would now be irreparably tarnished. "I've ruined things for both of us," she said miserably after he'd gone. Lucas sat beside her at the table, his expression serious. "Zara, I need to tell you something." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and it sent an unexpected warmth through her. "I came to Sweetwater 2 years ago running from a mistake I made in Colorado, nothing criminal, but something I'm not proud of." He told her about a cattle deal gone wrong, about trusting the wrong man and nearly losing everything. "My point is, I understand starting over, building something new from ashes, and I've watched you do it with more grace than most men could muster." Zara looked down at her hands. "I haven't felt very graceful. Most days I'm just trying not to drown." "That's why I kept coming back," Lucas said softly. "Not because I pitied you or because I was pursuing you, as folks said. I came back because every time I saw you fighting to keep going, it reminded me that I could keep going too." The honesty between them felt like a tangible thing, delicate but strong. For the first time since John died, Zara allowed herself to really look at the man before her not as her husband's coworker or her charitable neighbor, but as himself. Lucas Galloway, with his steady hands and quiet laugh and eyes that saw her strength when she could only feel her weakness. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you and Emma get well and you go home and people talk until something more interesting comes along." Lucas smiled slightly. "And I'll respect your wishes about not calling anymore if that's still what you want." It wasn't what she wanted. The realization was sudden and absolute, but admitting it felt like a betrayal of John's memory. "I need time," she said finally. Lucas nodded. "Time is something I've got plenty of." Zara and Emma returned home 3 days later. The garden had withered in her absence, and the chickens had been raided by a fox. It was a setback, but not an insurmountable one. She had survived worse. October brought an early snow and a letter from the mining company. The claim she'd filed for John's death had been denied on a technicality. There would be no compensation beyond his final wages. The letter trembled in Zara's hands as she calculated how long her meager savings would last. November brought bitter cold and a notice from the bank. The mortgage payment was overdue, and without John's income, foreclosure loomed. Zara sold her wedding ring and John's pocket watch to make the payment, each item a piece of her heart she couldn't afford to keep. December brought Christmas, which Zara celebrated quietly with Emma, now toddling and babbling her first words. She hadn't seen Lucas since leaving his cabin, though occasionally she spotted his distinctive silhouette on the horizon, checking on her from a respectful distance on Christmas Eve. As snow fell in thick, silent flakes, someone knocked at her door. Zara opened it to find Lucas, his hat dusted with snow, a small wooden horse in his hands. "Merry Christmas," he said simply. "For Emma." Zara invited him in, her resolve weakening at the sight of him. They sat by the fire while Emma played with her new toy, conversation flowing more easily than Zara expected after months apart. "I heard about the mortgage," Lucas said eventually. "And the compensation claim." Zara stiffened. "News travels fast. It's a small community." Lucas hesitated. "I have a proposition if you'll hear it. Business, not personal," he added quickly. "I'm listening. My ranch is doing well. The cattle drive this year brought good money, but I can't expand without more hands. I can't afford to hire year-round, and temporary help is unreliable." He looked directly at her. "Your land adjoins mine to the west. Good grazing land that you're not using. I propose a partnership. Your land, my cattle, shared profits." Zara frowned, considering. "Why would you offer this? You could buy my land outright when the bank forecloses." "Because that's not the kind of man I am," Lucas said quietly. "And because you and Emma deserve to keep your home." It was a practical solution that would benefit them both, yet Zara sensed something beneath the practicality, a deeper reason he wasn't expressing. "I'll think about it," she promised. Lucas nodded and stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. "Zara, whatever you decide about the business arrangement, I want you to know something. I've kept my distance because I respect your grief and your independence, not because my feelings changed." Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving Zara with his unspoken confession lingering in the air. January 1879 arrived with a blizzard that lasted 3 days. When it finally cleared, Zara spotted smoke rising from Lucas's chimney and felt relief that he'd weathered the storm. That evening, his foreman, a grizzled man named Hank, rode up with an urgent message. "Boss took a bad fall checking fences after the storm," Hank explained. "Broke his leg something fierce. Doc said it, but he needs tending, and I've got to move the herd to lower pasture before the next storm hits." Zara didn't hesitate. "Let me gather some things for Emma." Lucas was pale but alert when she arrived, his leg splinted and elevated on his bed. His surprise at seeing her quickly gave way to gratitude. "You didn't have to come," he said weakly. "You didn't have to bring food to my door last spring," she countered, already unpacking her supplies. "Yet here we are." For 2 weeks, Zara tended to Lucas while managing both households. She brought Emma with her each day, and the little girl quickly grew attached to Mr. Luke, demanding stories and giggles that Lucas, despite his pain, never refused to provide. Watching them together, Lucas teaching Emma to stack blocks with his good leg serving as a table, Zara felt something shift inside her. The guilt that had plagued her began to ease, replaced by a tentative acceptance that loving Lucas didn't diminish what she'd shared with John. On a clear February evening, with Lucas finally able to move about on crutches, they sat before his fire while Emma slept nearby. "I've been thinking about your business proposal," Zara said. "I'd like to accept with one condition." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Name it." "I want to learn the cattle business, not just provide land but work alongside you. I need to be able to support Emma on my own if anything happens." Lucas studied her face in the firelight. You're the most capable person I know, Zara Holbrook. I'd be a fool not to teach you everything I can. The partnership began as the spring thaw arrived. Lucas taught Zara about breeding stock and grazing rotation, about market prices and contract negotiations. She proved a quick study, her determination making up for her lack of experience. By summer, they had established a routine. Lucas would ride to Zara's homestead 3 times a week to discuss business and help with repairs. Sometimes they shared meals, sometimes just coffee on the porch while Emma played at their feet. The whispers in town continued, but with less venom, success in business had a way of blunting criticism. One August evening, exactly 1 year after Zara had sought Lucas's help for Emma's fever, they sat watching a spectacular sunset from her porch. Emma had fallen asleep on Lucas's lap, her small hand clutching his shirt. "I've been meaning to give you this," Lucas said, carefully shifting Emma to reach into his pocket. He handed Zara a folded document. She opened it to find her deed with the bank's stamp marking the mortgage paid in full. "What is this?" she asked, confused. "Your share of the profits from the spring drive," Lucas explained. "I applied it directly to the mortgage. You own this land free and clear now, Zara." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything, it's what partners do." Lucas looked down at Emma, brushing a curl from her forehead with gentle fingers. "Zara, there's something else I need to tell you." "What is it?" "I'm selling the ranch. Got an offer from a cattle company out of Cheyenne. Good money enough to start fresh somewhere with more opportunity." The words hit Zara like a physical blow. "You're leaving?" "That depends entirely on you." Lucas met her gaze steadily. "I love you, Zara. I think I have since that first day at your door. I love Emma too, like she was my own. I'm not asking to replace John, no one could, but I'm asking if there might be room in your heart for something new." Zara's hand trembled as she reached for his. "There already is, has been for some time." "Then marry me," Lucas said simply. "Come with me to Colorado. There's good land there by a river where Emma can grow up strong and free. We can build something together, a home, a family, a future." "Yes," Zara whispered, the word carrying all the hope she'd thought lost forever. "Yes, I'll marry you." They were wed in October, a small ceremony with only a few friends present. Pastor Mitchell, who had once looked on their friendship with disapproval, spoke movingly about second chances and God's mysterious ways. As winter approached, they prepared for the journey to Colorado. On their final night in the cabin where John and Zara had begun their brief marriage, Lucas found Zara standing by the window, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. "Having second thoughts?" he asked gently. Zara shook her head. "Just saying goodbye, to this place, to the life I had here." Lucas wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "John will always be part of who you are, part of Emma. I wouldn't want it any other way." Zara turned in his embrace, facing the man who had first brought food to her door and then, slowly and surely, brought hope back to her heart. "I know. That's why I love you." They left Wyoming just before Christmas, traveling by train with Emma excited by each new sight. The land Lucas had purchased sight unseen exceeded their expectations, a fertile valley protected by mountains, with a clear river running through it. "What shall we call it?" Lucas asked as they stood surveying their new home, Emma bundled against the cold between them. Zara looked at the valley, then at her husband and daughter. "Hope Creek," she said decisively, "because that's what brought us here." By spring, they had built a sturdy cabin and started fencing pasture for cattle. By summer, Zara was expecting their first child together. By the following winter, Jacob Galloway had joined their family, his lusty cries filling their home with new joy. Years passed, and Hope Creek Ranch prospered. Emma grew into a confident young woman with her father's courage and her mother's determination. Jacob was followed by 2 sisters, Sarah and Rebecca, each child strengthening the bonds of the family Lucas and Zara had created. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Lucas presented Zara with a small wooden box. "What's this?" she asked, opening it to find a delicate silver locket. "Open it," he urged. Inside was a miniature portrait of John Holbrook on one side and a family portrait of Lucas, Zara, and all 4 children on the other. "So you always have your whole heart with you," Lucas explained, his voice thick with emotion. Zara touched the locket reverently, then looked up at the man who had taught her that love wasn't a finite resource to be spent only once. "My whole heart is right here," she said, taking his hand and placing it over the locket now resting against her chest. "It always has been." As the sun set over Hope Creek, painting the sky in the same gold and crimson hues they had watched together on Zara's porch so many years ago, Lucas and Zara stood on the porch of their expanded home. Their children's laughter echoed from inside, a symphony of the life they had built together. "Did you ever imagine this?" Zara asked, leaning against his shoulder. "That day you brought ham and potatoes to a grieving widow's door," Lucas smiled, wrapping his arm around her waist. "I didn't dare imagine it, but I hoped, Zara. From that very first day I hoped." And in the gathering twilight, surrounded by the legacy of their love, Zara knew that hope, like love itself, was the most powerful force on earth. It had carried her through her darkest days and delivered her to this moment of perfect contentment, where past and present existed in harmony, and the future stretched before them, bright with promise.